Complacency is the enemy of all creativity. With complacency comes arrogance, and with arrogance comes laziness. We can see this in the movies that slither their way onto our screens, the music that slinks into our ears, and the video games that are pushed onto our hard drives. Therefore, it's often left to the indie space to bring us that inventiveness, that feeling of excitement and rejuvenation. Removed from the overwatch of oppressive executives, indie game studios can thrive and bring us games that explore innovative concepts and transformative designs, bodies of work that take their respective art form into unexplored territories or progressing already established norms. AAA gaming is arguably the most egregious offender when discussing creative bankruptcy, with many publishers taking pride in selling us the identical game every year, with barely a new coat of paint to justify the further investment of time and money. Indie studios consistently outshine their larger budget counterparts. Titles such as Undertale, The Outer Wilds, and Stardew Valley. These will demonstrate the results of allowing a game to flourish under the love and care of talented developers. Kena Bridge of Spirits is the maiden project from EmberLab, a new studio that has produced a game that has no right to look this beautiful, to be this technically polished, and to deliver a game world that is this skillfully fleshed out, while overwhelming the player with charm and personality. Without a doubt, Kena Bridge of Spirits is 100% worth your time. Even though there are a few small issues, it's not perfect, not by any definition, but it's an incredibly impressive start for the brand new studio.
Hey, Mr. Russo! We've been looking for you! We brought our friend Kena. She's here to help Taro.
First off, a small amount of housekeeping. Kena is available on PlayStation 5 and PC via the Epic Games Store. I played this on PlayStation 5 with patch 1.06 installed. There are many synonyms I could use to describe the appearance and design of the world that EmberLab have crafted. Beautiful, amazing, stunning, and they're all accurate. Seriously, the first 10 minutes of this game, I was blown away. Here you're walking through a cave, being introduced to some of the mechanics you'll be using throughout your playthrough, all the while lighting the path ahead using your spirit energy. The bioluminescent light that begins to spread throughout the cave transports you immediately into the game's world, while letting your eyes know they're in for something special. After a small introduction to the combat, something we'll get back to in just a little bit, we stepped outside into the bright open world and my jaw dropped. Even my fiancé was awestruck by how truly gorgeous this world is. The vibrant green hills we first find ourselves in and the snowy mountains towering over us in the distance truly bring us into Kena's realm. I remember visiting the Netherlands many years ago and being hypnotized by the rolling green hills. Kena not only brought back those memories but also that feeling, something I carried with me through the entire game. From the gloomy areas of the Forgotten Forest to the beautiful mountain peaks and whimsical village, attention is paid in every minute detail. Skill Up in his review described it as Pixar meets Studio Ghibli, and I couldn't agree more. The influences are striking yet also unique. EmberLab uses Indonesian and Balinese mythology to transform the somewhat familiar into the new. The story is primarily told through a show-don't-tell manner, never treating the player as an idiot, something that is incredibly refreshing. EmberLab is punching far above their weight with Kena, and the way in which they tell Kena's story highlights this in a more subtle nature than the overwhelming beauty of the world, creating this wonderfully complete package. A lot of AAA games feel the need to consistently heap exposition onto the player, never allowing us to discover the story beats for ourselves. Kena Bridge of Spirits provides just enough information to give you an understanding of your purpose and a look into the lore of the world while never actually spelling it out for you, leaving just the right amount of breadcrumbs for you to put the pieces together yourself. The superb voice acting adds another layer to the already remarkable game, not to mention the score. The music perhaps encapsulates the entire experience better than anything else. Simply put, it's bloody brilliant and I loved every beat.
They're usually timid. Something tells me you did not come to our village looking for forest creatures.
Hello, Spirit. I seek passage to the Sacred Mountain Shrine.
Our village is bound to the shrine's energy, but that power faded long ago.
Kena as our protagonist was fantastic. an expertly well-crafted heroine, and one I can't wait to discover more about. By the time the credits rolled, there was so much left to learn about Keena's past and who she is that I almost felt unsatisfied. Almost. If it wasn't for the journey we'd just completed together, this would have been my exact sentiments. However, what I wanted was more, and what I felt was incredibly rewarded. It was as if I just finished the final course of a degustation at a 3-star restaurant. All I wanted was another serving. EmberLab have laid the foundations for the next great hero in gaming, and if Sony hasn't already made EmberLab a first-party studio, then they'll be letting the golden goose walk right out the front door. The story of Keena is simple. It's about moving on and finding the power to forgive others and yourself, not allowing the past to control you but rather guide you. That's all I want to say, because I really believe that players need to experience this for themselves. At its heart, Keena is a platformer and has some simple yet well executed platforming scattered throughout its world, which unfortunately tends to lean more into the monotonous the further you progress into the game, although the puzzles do encourage you to explore and discover the world's secrets. Along the way, you'll gain new abilities to access previously locked areas, providing a satisfying loop of exploration, even if the reward is often disappointing. Mostly, you'll be rewarded with gems. These gems allow you to purchase new hats for your little mates, the Rot, your adorable sidekicks who allow Keena to perform special attacks in combat and help her rid the world of corruption. These gems are one of the 3 negatives I have regarding Keena Bridge of Spirits, the other 2 being the combat and then the dull rhythmic puzzles. First, the gems. You collect an incredibly large amount of them through your journey for no other purpose than playing dress up. As cute as it was, it would have been nice to use this currency to upgrade Keena's staff or clothing, something to provide you with an edge during combat. The Rot are unmistakably adorable, and I enjoy putting hats on all of them, even if my OCD require me to have a minimum of 2 of each hat equipped. You can actually upgrade your abilities, but this uses karma, another form of currency that's strip-fed to you as you perform actions in the world or progress through the story. Once I finished the game, I had so many gems remaining that even if I purchased the most expensive hats, I still wouldn't be able to spend them all. The biggest issue with these gems, as I said, are the uselessness. If the player was able to use these gems to enhance Keena or her equipment, it would provide the player with a more gratifying reward than simply purchasing hats, which ultimately do nothing for the gameplay experience. The puzzles I mentioned earlier become incredibly tedious as you approach the 3rd act, and devolved into a chore rather than maintaining their initial fun nature. The puzzles aren't difficult. Sure, there are some that do ask you to think a little outside of the box, but it's the mind-numbing repetitiveness that leaves you hoping it's the last one before a long cutscene gives you a break. My third and final gripe, which also happens to be my biggest issue with Keena Bridge of Spirits, is in regard to the combat. EmberLab have implemented a Souls-like action combat system, which requires the player to dodge, block, and parry while reading the enemy's telegraphs, or lack thereof, to time your attacks. I'm going to sum this up in 7 words. The combat is unbalanced and borderline unfair, at least at the time of recording. This has nothing to do with getting good, as the basic enemy fodder are simple enough to deal with, but when it comes to bosses, the difficulty curve goes through the roof. The combat needs work. Regardless of skill, it's undeniable, and it often feels just mean-spirited rather than challenging or difficult, as enemies can slide across the entire arena in barely a few frames and take off half your health. Small changes would vastly improve the experience, for example, adding a lock-on mechanic. At the time of recording, there isn't one. Rather, Keena attacks whatever direction she faces. That includes the charged special attack. So if the enemy happens to move before the game has registered the button input, then you've just wasted your ability. Games like Ghost of Tsushima handled this style of combat perfectly by pulling the camera back and allowing the player to observe the opponents around them. There are no audio cues either. You can easily be one hit when an enemy appears behind you without the slightest warning. To remedy this, you have to constantly dodge roll to gain a better position. Just don't fall outside the combat zone, or all the enemies will respawn. It also doesn't help that Keena's hitbox seems extraordinarily large, seemingly taking damage from across the room or even after dodging behind an enemy's attack. I've briefly touched on bosses, but I want to go into it in just a little more detail, mostly because all the flaws of Keena's combat system are on full display when in the midst of these battles. The best example is a major boss encounter approaching the midway point. This fight felt so stacked against a player that I had to bring the difficulty down to story mode just to beat it, and even then, I barely managed to win. He would clear the entire arena in what felt more like bad design than competent mechanics. He would then swipe me down to half or less health. Outside of a small AoE attack, the remainder of his moveset had no distinguishing telegraphs, making combat all the more frustrating, and in his third phase, the last third of my health drained when he decided to perform his grab attack on me twice, without the opportunity to dodge or shield. Buggy is a word I would use, broken is another, or perhaps it's the poor understanding of what makes Souls-like combat fun. Reducing the difficulty was a tactic I would sadly employ the further the game went on. By the time I approached the final few boss encounters, I began to wonder how anyone could possibly be able to take on these opponents on expert or master difficulty. The combat system leans more towards cheap and hard rather than fair and hard. You have special attacks that can be executed when you build up enough rot energy, but this requires you to play aggressively, as with each hit you land you gain more energy. The issue here is that during tough fights or when you're ganged up on, playing aggressively will almost always lead to death. Furthermore, you gain rot energy while exploring the world, but when you begin a fight, any fight, that energy is gone and you start from zero. For the life of me, I cannot imagine why this decision was made. EmberLab won't even allow the player to gain a small advantage when they may be struggling with a tough encounter. Healing uses the same resource and requires you to transform flowers in the arena. One flower equals one reserve of energy, so if you need to heal during a tough battle, first you need to find the blue spirit flower, quickly expend your rot energy to free it, all the while keeping track of an enemy you can't see. Worse still, there are only 2 of these per encounter. Let me be clear, you are only given 2 chances to heal during a boss encounter. This is the best evidence I can give that shows EmberLab didn't understand how to appropriately implement a challenging combat system without it teetering over the edge into rage-quitting territory. It's all the more disappointing as the solutions to these issues are simple. Add in a locker mechanic, increase the player's damage output with each new rot level, allow the player to enhance Keena's staff, and allow healing with the directional button that drains rot energy rather than finding spirit flowers, or have both. Except now the flowers could help damage the boss you're facing. I'm actually rather fond of this last solution. The spirit flowers help to damage a boss. This would bleed into the narrative, as the world Keena is trying to heal is now helping to fight against the corruption, therefore not breaking the player's immersion, yet also giving the player the satisfaction of taking on a challenging foe. As I said, small changes, but small things can make or break a game. Keena Bridge of Spirits is by no means broken by its sadly simple flaws, but just as Icarus reached for the sun only to fall back to Earth, so too does EmberLab. While they ultimately survived the fall, I can't help but imagine the game they almost achieved. Despite its imperfections, Keena Bridge of Spirits is an outstanding start for EmberLab. Very few games have transported me into its world as much as Keena has. There were moments I truly felt like I was playing through a Studio Ghibli film. A wonderfully remarkable game, in spite of its lamentable combat and the myriad of stale platforming segments. The foundations of Keena Bridge of Spirits are rock solid, an achievement that many AAA developers struggle with. A game with a solid core can be fixed or altered post-launch, but a game with a cracked and broken core will never be able to recover. EmberLab have bolted out of the gates, and I hope this incredible team can keep up the pace. I strongly recommend Keena Bridge of Spirits. I don't like to give scores, instead let's compare Keena to other games to give you an idea. If you enjoyed Astro's Playroom, Windbound, Rhyme or Sackboy's Big Adventure, then Keena Bridge of Spirits is for you. Thank you very much for watching everyone, I really appreciate you spending your valuable time with me. Feel free to leave a comment or a like on the video, maybe you want to subscribe, or leave a dislike if it's not to your taste. Until next time, stay safe out there, take care, and see you later.